So that tone you just heard, I recorded it right here, in this room. If your heavy riffs are sounding more thin and fizzy than huge and ferocious, you're going to want to stick around. I'm about to show you the essential techniques to get absolutely massive guitar tones at home. Look, we've all been there. You write a riff that feels like it could level a building, but when you hit record, it sounds like a swarm of angry bees in a tin can. All the power is gone. It's thin, it has zero punch, and honestly, it's one of the most frustrating things for any guitarist recording at home. But I promise you, the fix isn't about dropping thousands on new gear. It's about using the tools you probably already have, but in the right way. In this video, we're going to go through the whole process, step by step. We'll start with the absolute bedrock of your signal, dialing in a crushing amp sim tone, and then use some simple but powerful mixing tricks to get that professional, wide, and aggressive sound your riffs deserve. Plus, if you stick around to the end, I'll tell you how to get a free guide that will guarantee you nail the most important step every single time. Before we even dream of distortion, we need to talk about the single most important piece of the puzzle, your DI signal. DI just means direct input, and it's the clean, raw signal from your guitar going straight into your audio interface. This is your block of marble. If the marble is cracked, the statue will be too. Getting a great DI is so critical because it gives you total flexibility. You can test out different amp simulators, reamp it through a real amp later, and tweak it endlessly without having to nail another perfect performance. It's the safety net every pro relies on, and you should too. So how do we get a killer DI? It all comes down to proper gain staging, which is just a fancy way of saying setting the right input level. A huge mistake people make is recording their DI signal way too hot. You see the meter and your brain says louder is better. The problem is when you record too hot, you get digital clipping, this nasty, unfixable distortion that sounds brittle and harsh. You might not even hear it while you're playing through a high gain amp sim because it's buried under all that distortion. But trust me, it's there, waiting to ruin your mix. Here's the golden rule. Play your absolute loudest, most aggressive palm muted chugs and set your interface's input gain so the signal peaks between -10 and -6 dB. That's the sweet spot. It gives you tons of headroom to avoid that nasty clipping while still giving you a strong, healthy signal. Don't go any hotter. This clean, dynamic DI track is the perfect launchpad for a monster tone. Okay, we have our perfect DI signal recorded. Now for the fun part, making it sound mean. For most of us at home, amp simulators are the way to go. They're convenient, versatile, and modern ones sound ridiculously good. First, pick your weapon. You'll want a high-gain amp model, something based on legends like a PV5150, a Mesa dual rectifier, or an Engel. These are the amps famous for that tight, aggressive metal sound. Now let's dial it in. It's so tempting to just crank the gain knob to 10, right? This is probably the second biggest mistake I see. Too much gain doesn't make you sound heavier, it makes you sound muddier. When you crank the gain, you're compressing everything and adding a ton of low-end mush that will just fight with the bass and drums later. A great starting point is to set the gain somewhere between 4 and 5. Remember, your picking hand is your real gain knob. Picking hard will push the amp and create a way more dynamic and aggressive sound than just drowning it in a swamp of distortion. As for the amp's EQ, let's forget the classic scooped mids thrash tone for a second. Modern metal tones need a strong mid-range to cut through a dense mix and give the riff clarity and punch. Try starting with your bass around 4 or 5, mid somewhere between 4 and 6, and treble around 6 or 7. Now, listen. Is it a little boomy? Back off the bass. Need more pick attack? Nudge the high mids. The trick is to make small, deliberate adjustments. Finally, and this is a game changer, you have to use a good impulse response, or IR. An IR is a digital snapshot of a real speaker cabinet being recorded by a real microphone. The cab and mic are just as crucial as the amp head. While most amp sims have stock cabinets, a quality third-party IR is probably the single biggest upgrade you can make to your tone. They provide a depth and realism that just can't be faked. The classic metal combo is a Mesa or Orange 4x12 cab with Celestion Vintage 30 speakers, captured with a virtual Shure SM57. This is your new playground. So you've dialed in an amp tone that you love. It sounds great by itself, but to make it really sit in a mix and maximize its aggression, we need to use a bit of post-EQ, an equalizer that comes after the amp sim. This is where we do some fine-tuning. The first move almost always is a high-pass filter. You want to cut out all of that useless low-end rumble happening between 80 and 100 Hz. Your guitar isn't doing anything useful down there, it's just creating mud and getting in the way of the kick drum and bass. Cleaning this up instantly tightens up your whole mix. Next, let's kill the fizz. You know, that harsh, staticky high end that makes home recordings sound cheap? It usually lives somewhere between 6K and 7K. Use a low-pass filter to gently roll off those super high frequencies. This smooths out the tone and makes room for your cymbals to shine. Now, let's dial in the aggression. The soul of a heavy guitar is in the mid-range. A small cut around 500 Hz can get rid of a boxy sound, but be careful not to overdo it. The real magic often lies between 1.5 and 4K. A little boost here will bring out your pick attack, making the guitar feel more present and in your face. This is what gives your riffs that sharp, defined bite. And here's another trick. Try a transient shaper. This tool lets you enhance just the initial smack of a note. If you place one before your amp sim and subtly boost the attack, you can make your picking feel way more aggressive and punchy without adding any mud. Ever wonder how pro recordings get that massive wall of guitar sound that fills your headphones? The secret is double tracking. And no, this does not mean copying your guitar track and pasting it into a new one. All it does is make it louder. Real double tracking means you record the exact same riff a second time on a completely separate track. Because you're human and not a robot, that second performance will have tiny, microscopic differences in timing and feel. These little imperfections are what create a huge, rich, and wide sound. The standard move is to pan your first guitar take 100% to the left speaker and your second take 100% to the right speaker. When you hit play, the sound isn't just coming from the middle anymore, it's surrounding you. The key to great double tracking is tight playing. Your two takes need to lock in as closely as possible. If one is sloppy, the whole thing falls apart. Practice the riff until you can play it in your sleep. Then record until you have two takes that feel really solid together. If you want to go even bigger for a chorus, try quad tracking. 2 performances panned left and 2 more panned right. It's absolutely colossal. For those of you using a real amp instead of a simulator, all these principles still apply. To get a bright, aggressive sound, try putting a dynamic mic like an SM57 right up on the grill, pointing at the center of the speaker cone. If that's too harsh, angle the mic about 45 degrees or move it slightly off center to get a bit more body. Better yet, use 2 different mics and blend them together. The goal is the same, capture a great core tone to work with. So let's just step back and look at what we did. We took a signal that was probably thin and fizzy and gave it a solid foundation by recording a clean DI at the right level. Then we built a powerful tone with an amp sim, focusing on a strong mid-range instead of just cranking the gain. We used simple EQ moves to carve out mud, tame fizz, and boost the aggression. And finally, we created a massive wall of sound by double tracking our parts and panning them wide. It really isn't magic, and it's not about having the most expensive gear. It's about applying these core techniques with a purpose. The power to create a crushing, professional-sounding guitar tone is already in your hands, right there in your home studio. Now I want to hear from you. What's your single biggest struggle with guitar tone? Is it the fizz, the mud, the lack of punch? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them, and I'd love to help out. And because getting that foundation right is so important, I put together a free, detailed guide on how to capture perfectly clean guitar and bass DIs every single time. The link is right at the top of the description below. If you got something out of this, a subscribe would be amazing. I have a lot more videos planned to help you make better music at home. Thanks for hanging out. Now go make some noise.